Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Wow, what a first half, huh? We've had a chance to hear from Wendelle, and Wendelle took us back to like the beginning of the contacts, gave us first-person stuff about the reality of this going on. A lot of behind-the-scenes, nuts and bolts verifications of things. And then we moved into Michael, and Michael came in and summarized the content of the messages and the importance and why we need to pay attention to the stuff that is coming to us through Billy Meier from the Pleiadian and other extraterrestrial contact. And now we've brought Christian Frehner all the way from Switzerland to continue and build on this. And Christian, kind of for like the last 15 years has been in the Meier camp and has been living it and has been present through the new series of contacts. And I'm telling you guys, again, we're going to hear first person from a man that has been there and has lived it. And then following Christian's presentation, we will go into Q&A. And then if there's a little time left over, Wendelle said that he might be willing to show us a few of the old original type photos from the Meier case at the end, if we have time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Christian Frehner.
Good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Everything is dark here. I'm in the light. I need some paper here for my job that I have to fulfill here. First, I have to start here. I need the pictures. I've never been so far away from home, I must admit. And I never held a lecture in this kind of setting. And I'm not English speaking, and I won't talk as fast as Michael. Okay. Here you see the shield that's at the entrance of the Semjase Silver Star Center. And you see the name FIGU. FIGU, that's, you see snow. This picture I made a week ago, last weekend. We still have snow since 3 months. What I can say is that I am a member of the Core-Group since 1987. That's the translation, what FIGU means in English. FIGU was founded by Billy Meier in 1975, and we Core-Group members are helping him to disseminate the information that's hidden behind this famous UFO case. And here you see where the center lies. You see the mouse here, yeah, okay. It's not everything here. That's, here is the center. That's Schmidruti here. And this is a valley, there's a rim going around here. And I made last weekend also. And here you see the opposite direction. I have stood here on this hill here and made the other photo. Here you see the main building of the center, here the garage. Here is the parking lot, and the other building is to the left side here. So you have some kind of impression. It's not in the center or in a town or in a village. We are about 800 meters above sea level. Yeah, I'm here as a representative of Billy Meier. Actually, it was he who was invited to come here, but he could not come, and he asked me to present you his kind regards to everybody of you, and he wishes you all the best. He could not come to this invitation or follow this invitation because since many years he doesn't leave the region where he lives. And although he frequently visits the nearby towns where he does shopping for the center or for FIGU. He does not travel great distances anymore. And he hasn't left Switzerland for years, but there are exceptions, of course, when he's invited for a flight with the extraterrestrials by his friends. Then the distances are a bit farther than just Switzerland, or as it has happened occasionally, or does happen occasionally, that he asks his friends to go on a trip. And I will talk about two of those that happened recently. The picture should be here. That's a laptop computer, and somehow, good. That's a photo of Mars. Billy had wanted to go once again on this red-brown planet on Mars to experience one of those beautiful sunrises with that marvelous blue radiation, which is quite different from the ones here on Earth. It's different when the sun rises there than here on Earth. And second, he wanted to go, on the same occasion, he wanted to visit the volcano that's called Olympus Mons. That's on Mars. And it's 27,000 meters high. This volcano, that's about 3 times Mount Everest. And he wanted to have a walk on top of it, of course, with a space suit. And the third wish, however, that could not be fulfilled. He wanted to take back a sample of the volcano material at home, but Ptah said, no, you cannot do this because of security reasons. And these probes do contain sulfur, bacteria, and perhaps other sources would be interested to get this material. Another occasion, this was about 3 or 4 years ago. Billy visited the grave of Mozart. This grave lies outside of Vienna in a remote place, and he is not buried in Vienna as the people believe. He was buried there by his friend Franz Xaver Süssmayr, it's called. And his grave will never be found. And just for the record, I wrote here, Mozart died of lung tuberculosis. I hope you understand my English. Long-term medical poisoning and Lyme borreliosis after having been bitten by a tick years before. That's a little digression here. Digression. That's, okay. Billy is very busy. He's working 7 days a week, makes no vacation, is always there. Unfortunately, his health has improved very much since his severe accident he had in 1982, when he suffered a severe breakdown and had heavy brain injuries. And he was at the brink of death for many years. And there's, you already heard it, there's much unusual and strange in Billy's life. And this improvement of health from such a severe injury is kind like a miracle or a wonder. But of course, wonder don't exist. So there are other reasons behind this. I want to present you a kind of an update of the last 15 years or so. And when I prepared my lecture, I didn't know who will be here, how much you know about this. And so I thought I will start with the persons. There are 39 people with whom Billy had contacts since his childhood. You will see then that there are some repetitions. I didn't know and didn't see Michael's lecture, but I heard once that repetition is the mother of all learning, and so it can be used for this. And when I say contact persons, this means that at least once Billy had a conversation with this person, and also that this person was made of flesh and blood, like we all of here, and not mentioned here will be all those many people he met during his travels when he was together with the Pleiadians on the great giant mothership or elsewhere. This picture you know here. Know that I forgot to to change the pictures. This picture you have seen already. Billy had his first contact at the age of 5. This was a telepathic one. And then 2 years later, he had his first contact by an old man, Svat. You already heard his name. That was the same person that started the telepathic communication 2 years ago. And this is a sketch made by Ptah. That's the son of Svat. And from this sketch here, Christian Krukowski made the other one that you just have seen from Michael. And so I'll leave this here. That's another variation. This contact lasted for 11 years. And when Svat died in 1953, his successor was a woman called Asket, we are saying in German. And the picture you have seen also here from the Dahl universe. And at that time, when Asket came as a new contact person, Billy was 16 years old. This is also known by you. Contact with Asket lasted for another 11 years. And during this time, he traveled, as you have heard, to Africa, through Europe, Middle East, India, Pakistan. And at one time, he had 2 monkeys. Emperor Hanuman was the name of one. Well, it was very adventurous, very dangerous, his life that he led. And then comes the information about his marriage here. And this was the reason that the daughter here was born in West Pakistan, and then he came back to Switzerland and settled down here. He was at one time he was a watchman. He made his living as a watchman. So that's the reason why he has this uniform on here. And then, January 28, 1975, the green light went on regarding Billy's mission. The woman, Semjase, you know her, landed outside of Hinwil in Switzerland in a beam ship, and this was then the beginning of the contacts. And so, after a couple of months, Billy, and having been taken, after he could take all so many photographs, he went to the public, and then the worldwide resonance started. Semjase, by the way, is Svat's granddaughter and was Billy's main person for many years. There's another microphone. Oh. Sorry. So, I'm sorry, I'm not used to talk about. Yeah, then she, when Semjase had had a severe accident at the center. She went to the dual universe for treatment and recovery, and there she will stay for a total of 70 years. Semjasis once returned in 2004 together with her friend Asket. Semjasis' home planet is called Era. The system is Pleiadian, also that's a plural, and the people have the same name. The people, that's in German, and you would read it different here. Pleiadian, I think you would say, but the correct name is Pleiadian. And for the first 15 years, the Pleiadians named themselves the Pleiadians, or coming from the Pleiades. And the Pleiades are these, the Pleiades that we are seeing on our night sky. And here you don't find any animal or human life. And they had a reason for this, to call them their origin Pleiades, because now when they changed and disclosed the information that they are not coming from there, you can now see who's talking the truth. And so you can be sure that anyone who claims to be in contact with beings from the Pleiades is either joking, cheating, or suffering from some form of schizophrenia. Billy's main person since Semjasis' departure is Ptah, here drawn by himself. This is the other version you have seen already, like this here. He will remain the main contact person as long as Billy lives. Ptah is Semjasis' father and Sfat's son. Ptah is about 790 years old and quite familiar with what's going on Earth here. He is the responsible Ishwish for Earth. Ishwish is a title and has the meaning of some king of wisdom, you could say, or he who has reached a very high level of wisdom. I think that's a better translation, because he's not a king. He's the Ishwish on Era, his home planet, and of the planet Alatides in the Pleiadian system, and here Terra, the other one. An Ishwish, or as an Ishwish, Ptah is the primus inter pares among the spiritual guides of the Pleiadian people. On Era there is no government like we know it here on Earth. There are 24,000 spirit guides distributed over the planet. They are working like other people, but they have some greater knowledge, and they are you could say they are teachers, and teach them the spiritual teachings to the population. Ptah and his family have special connections to Earth, because already Ptah's great-grandfathers, Gabriel and Hilak, were involved here. Hilak witnessed the great Santorin catastrophe 1,453 years before Christ. And Gabriel, he was the extraterrestrial father of Emmanuel that you have already heard before. And regarding Emmanuel, that's an additional information. That's a drawing of Emmanuel. He looked like this. And there, the fourth edition of the Talmud Emmanuel will come out during this year. At the moment it's not available, and you will get it from, there is the internet address from Steelmark. And as you heard, James Dierarf is among us. He is involved in the whole explanation and distribution of this book, and you see his internet address there. The next person is Quetzal, here also, the first drawing, the other version here. Quetzal is an interesting person. He was much involved during the first years of FIGU, and he was the co-author of FIGU's regulations and guidelines. When Billy met him for the first time, he was the commander of the Pleiadian group, who was working here on Earth in their station and in their beam ships. In the meantime, Quetzal has become an Ishvish like Da, and he's also responsible for 3 planets, one being the sister planet of Era, and 2 planets in the Harkonnen system. I don't know where it is. And Quetzal has 4 wives and 6 children. That's Pleia here. She's the sister of Simeasi, and one peculiar information is that she once drove Billy's moped. That's yeah. And Nera, she was in the Dahl universe. She is a friend of Asket, and he met her there on the Great Voyage. As you might know, in 1975, Billy made a trip throughout the universe for 5 days. He was in the giant beam ship of Da, and he could make many photographs, and also he could go to another universe. The next person, I don't give much information. Rala, Isados, Electra, they are from Era. Then Menara, Alena, you can read, you see it behind. From there on, the Lyra Vega system, Lyra Vega that we see on the sky. Sana Ecto Lumia Ters, just visitors from Druan, from the system Null. Then we have Solar, Talide, and Zeltan. Talide, the middle here, the woman, she had several years, she was a contact person with Billy, and then she witnessed, during the Gulf War, she witnessed the terrible atrocities that were done to the people there, and this, she got sick of this in her psyche, and she couldn't continue with her work here, and she had to go back to recover from the shock from these impressions she got there. Talida has blue skin, not blue, yellow skin, yellowish, like saying the Chinese, because she has the same ancestors than the Chinese and Japanese people. And yes. Then, I don't know if you heard of Asina. She's from Deneb, from Cygnus, from the Cygnus system. This system is 2,000 light years away from the Sol system, and she belongs to an amphibian race. The average lifespan of her race is 230 years. And Asina resembles a cross between a frog and a fish. And her skin is smooth, and on the back of her head she has kind of a crest. And she has long fingers, the double length of Billy's or mine. In November 1977, Asina and her crew were stranded on Earth because of an engine damage. They were not very, very good, and they couldn't repair their ship, and their main way of communication was telepathically. And through the aid of Billy, the Pleiadian got notice of them and helped them to return to their home planet. They had been on an expedition. And many years later, in 2000, actually on September 26th, Asina made a surprise visit at Billy's place and thanked him for his help 13 years ago. Because at that time, they didn't met, and so she came back. And 10 days earlier, Here in FIGU Core-Group member had the sighting. It was in the evening about 30 minutes past 9 in the evening when we were outside here, where the birch trees there a bit, we stood there, and then that is direction to the north here, to the north. Must look like this. So, like this. That's the north side. And there we saw on the sky 21 lights standing low over the horizon. And we later learned that this had been the fleet of Asina and her people ready to jump to another place. They were making an expedition, and they were exploring Earth's neighbor planets. I also made a photograph then at night with my photo camera, but it was all black only when I processed it because I hadn't a tripod, and so these tiny little dots could not be seen. Next here, Florena. Here you see the ages of these persons, the two women here, and an interesting name, Safinat Paneah. That's the man, and he's in a union with the two women here. And Safinat Paneah, he's an interesting man that he has learned 23 professions. He occupies himself with terrestrial electronics. His main interests, I read it here, are the extremely fine electronics of the nano and ultra-nano technology, as well as subatomic technique and subatomic electronics. He owns a huge collection of computer devices here. I think about, for the last 20 years, he has every device that was invented here on Earth he owns in his collection. He's a computer expert and has a combination of knowledge of all electronic technicians here on Earth. And he is helping us with our computer system. And they gave us advice how to prevent intruders in our system. Then Enyana. She is Safinat Paneah's representative, and he's away. She is in charge of his tasks. Tauron, he is also one with many professions, 19 in all. He's mainly involved with security analysis and biological and technical cybernetics. Samyang, he is also busy in these technical fields, subatomic vacuum technology and subatomic crystal physics and crystal technology. And he's coming as the leader from the Nissan system here, the same ancestors as the Chinese and Japanese people. Sudor is the next one. His name means shoemaker, and he has a funny hobby. He makes shoes for himself. He is 18 professions, has he learned, among them ultra-subatomic computer technician. Nefratisa is his friend. Fetanika, she's, you can read it, Safinat Paneah's sister, and Tanette, she's Florena's sister. They are here, you see, intermingled. Yeah. Then, the next here, Gaudon and Queda. And a very young person here with 97 years. It's quite a difference to the other persons. That's Inobea. As a surprise, then came visiting him 3 persons. They are spirit guides here. Melchora, Urlana, 2 women, and a man, Jaspan. This was in 2002. For the first time, he had visits from the Spirit Guides community. Naidesha, she is a simple woman from the people. She had the great wish to visit once in her lifetime Billy, and she asked, can I come with you once to visit Billy? And he said, yeah, okay, come with me. And she's working as a supervisor in a plant for food production. And now I come to the youngest visitor ever, Kladena Aikarina. She's 11 years old. She was last year. She came visiting Billy. And the reason for this was that she had won a competition on error, kind of a survey they made. They were trying to find a description for Billy's mission, for the mission that Billy and FIGU is doing here on Earth. And she won this competition with this sentence here, or this expression, the silent revolution of truth. And this was accepted by the entire population as the name they are using in their chronicles, in their history to describe what we are doing here on Earth, and they are helping us. And now I come to the last person that was visiting, that was last month, in January this year, Florena's mother. Yeah, she's also from Era. And with these explanations, I wanted to give you the impression that these are not angels, no exalted or ascended masters, no supernatural beings. They are simple human beings. And that's an important thing to know, that the extraterrestrials are beings. They are not figments of the imagination or something unreal. They are real people driving with a ship and so coming in this way. And perhaps one last example for this kind of simple or human touch with these people. Ptah, as I told you, as the chief, not actually the chief, the primus inter pares of the whole federation. He owns a complete collection of all postal stamps that have ever been printed here on Earth in all countries. And I don't think that the supernatural human being or a supernatural being would have a hobby at all. And now let's turn from this kind of who's who to the flying objects and the persons. And the beam ships, as they are called. Beam ships, it's a kind of an antique expression because it traces back or goes back to the time when they were propulsed with a beam. They had a beam propulsion. That is not the case anymore. The Billy Meier case, I think, is most famous because of these pictures here of the UFOs. That's many people are intrigued by this or fascinated by this. And there have been many pictures taken by Billy. And a huge amount, actually. And if I say a huge amount, that's the case. Like this. And I give you here a few examples. That's the first 100 here. The picture vanishes here in my screen. I have to use the mouse. I cannot see this. It's here you see the several ships here. Yeah. Then here. There's a whole series here with the tripod. From these scenes, there are existing 8mm films as well as photographs, and another 100 here. You see here the hole that he shot with a laser pistol through the apple tree, or here are traces of his footsteps in the beginning in the middle of a field, coming to the way out of the field. Here you see traces of an elf in the clay. Here you see landing tracks, and the ice was burned here in the parking lot. And there were over 1,000 photos have been either stolen or have been destroyed by Quetzal. Nearly all of the photographs he took, more than 1,000 during his great voyage, were manipulated by external forces after having been sent to the processing laboratory, and then Quetzal took them all and destroyed them. Next pictures here. Here is the wedding cake ship. You see here the mouse. Billy was sitting on one of the ships, and the remote control, the little one here, was flying around, and he could photograph it. Here you see at the top of a tree that the ship broke down, and then the juice flew out in streams here, and the wood went open. Next one here, bioorganic ships here, or metal samples here from other planets. That's just some of these many photos he made, and that are available from FIGU. That's actually the last, or one of the last pictures Billy made here from the wedding cake ship, as it is called. In the early 80s, Billy stopped making photographs of the beam ships, and he had then his accident, and so for nearly 15 years, no photos were made anymore from beam ships. And so we were pleased, of course, when in 1998, Core-Group member Edith Beldi was able to make this photo here. You see this ship here flying. She wasn't aware when she made the photo that Florena was up there. Florena tried the whole day to bring her ship to the attention of Edith, but she didn't look up in the sky. She had eyes for other things. And so we were lucky then and happy to have this picture here. Next one, just about 3 weeks later, there was an enlargement of the ship here. And then just about 3 weeks later, we had the passive meeting at Schmidruti, where all the passive members came together, and then on Sunday they made a visit, a walk here, these 3 people, and Bernhard Kallner photographed them here, and it was also not noticed that there was a ship up here. So here, they only found this peculiar here after having gotten back the film, the photos, and so it was a year later they brought it back to Schmidruti, and then it was analyzed, this picture here, by the Pleiadians. That's an analyze made by the Pleiadians, and then copied by Billy. That's not, he doesn't own the original of this. And it was, here the information about this Canon, it was showing Florena's beam ship just at that instant when the protection shield changed its frequency to not being detected by another foreign beam ship. They had at the same time another ship had been up there making observations, and the Pleiadians had a higher technology, and while changing the frequency, the back of their ship was visible, and so it was kind of a coincidence that they got on the photograph. Next picture shows Safinat Paneer's ship. You cannot see that it's a ship. It was a silvery dot in the sky that was driving by or flying by. Safinat Paneer and Samyang were in it. And earlier that evening, another ship was flying by, the highest, then an airplane, and beneath 5 hot air balloons. And so what you see here on the left side here, that's the top of the flagpole. Freddy Kroff made this photograph. It's a 500mm telelens up like this, beneath, just by the flagpole, and Billy asked that he put the flagpole top also in the picture. So that's the shade, the white shade here. Then the next 2 pictures are made by me here. I had also one of my sightings. This war has been in May 20, 2000. We were called that there was a ship up there at the sky. I had my photo camera at hand and so made a photograph, but my telelens was not good enough, and so you cannot see the ship here, but you see the weather. It was very sunny, a sunny evening. There was a tiny silvery dot up there in the sky, and it was not moving, but the clouds were moving. And then at one time there was a second silvery ship up there, and we could see this for half an hour. And so I thought, if I don't see I cannot photograph the ship, I will photograph the witnesses. There were 17 in all, but here you see just a few of them. Here you see, they are from 4 different countries. Here from Canada, that's Silvano Lehmann. Here behind is Billy here. And he is looking here with a lens. Yeah. Then I told you that Billy stopped making photographs since 1981 or 1980, and then we got notice of a man from the Pirg. The Pirg, it's the region around Schmidrüti. It's called this. It's a native name. He was able to do making the best photographs since the 80s. He was there, up above the center, for 4 years. He told us later, or told Billy later, again and again he was there, sitting up there on the center's ground or above, and trying or be prepared to see beam ships. On the one hand, he was interested or fascinated by the thought, and he was also a little bit skeptic. And so in the night of June 5th, 2001, at 50 past midnight, he was sitting there and had his camera ready on the tripod, and he was able to shoot these 5 photographs here of Ptah's ship. He was able to do this because Ptah had analyzed his thoughts. He recognized and detected him sitting there, and they found that his interest was genuine, and so decided to give him a demonstration. And very interesting that the same man was able to make photographs again 2.5 months later, at daylight, 2 photographs of Ptah's ship. Yeah, the man then came to Billy, told him his story, showed him the photographs, and requested that Billy will keep his name a secret. He doesn't want to be known there around, because he doesn't want to be called a UFO nutcase or Schmidrüti UFO nutcase, and he's in fear of his wife, because he told that his wife is very religious, looks upon UFOs as satanic things which are steered by Satan personally in order to prepare the souls for hell. And so he said, I don't want that my name is being published. Here's the last picture I will show you of such newer photographs of beam ships. That's in Vienna. And the castle is called Belvedere Castle in Vienna, Austria. Josef Gruber, he was photographed by his wife. She's a core group member. They didn't see the ship while making the photo, and we later learned. And this has happened several times. We have also several group members could make photographs of beam ships, but I don't have the time to show you all of them. The Pleiadian have always been very careful to not show themselves or their ships too close to persons, and this has been for a good reason, as has shown or has been proven by a tragic incident. Here. You see, here you see the center. That's the hill above the center. Here is Schmidrüti. And there goes a road behind this hill here, down to Schmidrüti, down to the valley, to Vila. And here, Ptah noticed that 3 men drove the street every day to go to work. And he overheard their speaking there, and they made derogatory remarks about Billy and his contacts. And so, on that day, when he saw them once again passing by and joking about Billy and making their remarks, he had a whim to show his ship to the 3 men. And then, about a month later, Billy received several urgent telephone calls from 2 of the 3 men. 2 men have been brothers. And so he learned that one of the brothers couldn't cope with this experience. Being of a very strong Catholic faith, he could not match his experience with his belief, and his mental state got worse and worse. So after the second suicide attempt, while being in a coma, he was sent to the hospital. When Billy informed Ptah on that same day, Ptah felt deeply startled and immediately went to the hospital and deleted from within the man's memory the entire experience. When the man woke up from his coma, he did not remember his experience, could not explain why he was in the hospital. He was then brought to a mental hospital for recovery and therapy. And then the other 2 men and the 3 wives apologized, of course, for their former negativity towards Billy, but they also want to be kept a secret and their names not be mentioned because they have fear of the other people. The next incident, I don't want to talk more in detail. Michael already told to you, Sistana and Dupral. What I can add perhaps is that these people are about this height here, 110 to 120 centimeters. They have light green skin and a hairless body. And the 7 fingers you already know. Billy had met them 3 times before, and so he knew when he saw these imprints here that this must be these tree lawns. And it's very interesting. It's now 8 seasons have passed since then, and you still see these imprints, the papillar lines, on the metal like in the first day. What you have seen today, or most of them what you have heard today, is, I would say, is the tip of an iceberg. The extraterrestrial visitors, flying objects, photos and footage, landing tracks, metal samples, all this is the tip of the iceberg. And as you know, the biggest part of the iceberg there is lies hidden beneath the surface. And I have prepared here a few pictures. The whole body that lies hidden is the facts about the origin of man and the universe, information on health, disease and politics, plenty, scientific information, prophecies and predictions, information about the origin of religions and their effects on the human beings, and instructions of improving one's own development and evolution. I asked myself, how could the teaching of Billy and FIGU that are disseminated on this world summarized, and I can make these statements here, as you see. It's creation. Creation is the all-encompassing force, the non-personal universal consciousness. It's not a person, which is in its immeasurable greatness and mightiness gave birth to the spiritual laws that enable our universe and all galaxies, planets, and life forms to exist and evolve. It brings the laws that enable this. That's important. That's no person. And each human being is connected to creation through a tiny fragment of creative spirit located in our brain. The spiritual part in us, it's like the battery of our cells, is immortal and incarnates again and again in different bodies and with different personality. This process is lasting for billions of years. All of us here will never be born again, our personalities, but there is a part of us that will be born again and continue to exist. Everything that we do, think, and feel is stored in a fine matter storage bank and accessible by our own consciousness during following existences of our spirit form. This has to do with reincarnation. And there is no higher entity or power between the human beings and creation. Creation, and then the human beings and the animals, of course, everything, life. Consequently, there is no one above who punishes us, human beings, for our deeds or our sins. We punish ourselves through the result of our thoughts and actions, and as has been said before, that's the law of cause and effect. If we do something that's not right, that's not correct, we feel remorse, we feel bad, have a bad conscience, and that's the direct punishment or direct effect of what we are doing, and we should use this to learn not to do it again, to make it better the next time. And there is no such thing as karma. That's also one of the main realizations. The human being's main purpose is to learn from his mistakes and gather knowledge and wisdom during all of her lifetime. And very important, each human being is solely responsible for the deeds, for what one is thinking, and what one is doing, and we are also responsible for what we are not doing. Sometimes we could do something, but don't do it, that we are also responsible. The prophets of old did not write down their teachings. There were other people around who heard what the prophets were saying and were then writing it down from memory and so. And this is not the case anymore. The knowledge that we receive, what FIGU is disseminating, comes from two sources. Of course, extraterrestrial friends, Billy's contacts, contact persons, and the second source of this knowledge is Billy's ability to have access to the oldest fine matter storage bank in the universe, reaching back billions of years. If we take this source number one, since January 28, 1975, until, here you see, 808 personal contacts have occurred between Billy and his extraterrestrial friends, 1,004 telepathic contacts, and of all of those 1,812, 410 are documented. They are documented in this here. These are 4,000 pages. That's the newest edition of the contact notes here, with pictures in it. Here, yeah. Each book has 500 pages. Yeah, and what's interesting, these have been corrected with the aid of the Pleiadians. Since several years, once a week, here, Bernadette Brandt, our secretary, is reading here the contact from the computer. Billy sits beside her with the original notes he typed with his typewriter or later with his computer. And above in the beam ship is either Pta, Florena or Adriana participating in this process, and they give telepathically corrections through Billy. And he says, stop, here is a word is missing or so, and they are reading their own contacts. I have to hurry a bit here. Source number two that I mentioned is, of course, Billy's books. He has written since 1975 about 40 books. And these are one of the couple of them. And I calculated this before I came here. From FIGU, there are 24,000 pages of information available in German, and about 500 pages in English, and not counted here are the Guido Moosbrugger's book and the Talmud Immanuel. And what is not known to most here, I think, is that Billy started writing spiritual teachings for the Pleiadians in 2001, and in this period, you can read it. He wrote 6,812 pages. At the moment, he's answering 1,400 questions they brought him. It's a bit quite of a task, and he hopes to finish it by the end of this year. This mission of Billy's and the teachings and the information, you heard already something from Wendelle and from Michael, seemed to be not so very agreeable with certain persons. So Billy had to experience 21 assassinations attempts since the first one was in 1964 in India. Only the mission-related are here. He had other ones as well. And here, I thought I will bring you a couple of photos from the number 20. In the afternoon here, they saw Billy and Silvano Lehmann saw a man on the center's ground appearing, and then when they wanted to go to him, he went away. And then in the evening, Billy heard a sound. He was sitting in the kitchen, a click outside, and he went out and came here to the lamp. Can I have the... thank you. I see it here in the monitor with the mouse. Here on the left is the kitchen behind this corner here. The lamp was shining here. He came up, and then a shot rang from this direction that we see here, and nearly hit him, but not, luckily not directly. And that's the other direction. Here is a trailer. And here the person must have been stood here and shot in this direction. And then here you see the window, and here the hole. And that's the bullet here, the left one, the remains of the bullet that hit the wall. And then I can show you something of the 19th assassination attempt. This has happened at 3 in the morning. Silvano and Billy were on the parking lot when suddenly Billy was hit here in the kidney area by this knife here. And luckily it turned, he was hit by the back here of the knife. And so he had a bad back here for a couple of days, but he survived. And Wendelle is among us. He was a witness of the 10th assassination attempt. They were sitting here in front of the house at the center in 1980. This had been, and here you see the distance between the bullet on the wall and Billy's head. And so it's to be a disseminator of the truth and of this knowledge is quite dangerous. But he never said to himself, I will quit my task and will stop doing my mission. That's not Billy's nature. My time is up, I see here. The Billy Meier case is not simply a UFO case that you have already realized, I think. It's a generalistic case for the whole of mankind. And so I think what I bring you here shortly is the biggest threats to mankind. The Pleiadians are, it's a great concern to them how our politics are working and everything. There are so much trouble here on Earth, and so the biggest threats to mankind are listed here. I listed them here as certainly overpopulation as the first one, terrorism and fanaticism, then interference in the affairs of foreign states, wasting of resources, wrong persons in governments, and the thinking a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. That's there is revenge behind this and hate and everything. That's the biggest threats, and overpopulation lies at the root of all great problems and its consequences. The biggest. Thank you. Yeah, and if the growth of the human population is not coming to an immediate standstill and then to a decrease, the already non-reversible damages will grow even further, because that's really a big problem. And I have here the latest number of the terrestrial population. It's 7.5 billion people. And I looked at the Census Bureau in the United States. They are counting at the moment 6.4 or 6.5 billion. That's 1 billion less than it's the actual numbers, because the Pleiadians are always have the actual numbers of living human beings on Earth. They have biogram devices that can show them who is alive and who is not. And 1 million or 1 billion people more, that's a really big problem. And urgent actions are a necessity, and here I list a few solutions. We don't only name the problems, you also have solutions, but they are not very easy, of course. This one here to make it, bring it to a reality all over the world. I don't think this will happen within the next week. Intervention into foreign countries must be stopped immediately. That's nothing new for you. The warmongering leaders must be removed from their offices. The people should, there are elections, and they should do their work correctly. And each country is responsible to solve their own problems themselves. We don't have to get into other people, to other countries and tell them what they must do if they don't ask. Stop with the piling of debt. That's also a big problem. Forming a multinational peacefighting troop, not under the command of one country, but in a different form. Dissolution of all political parties. Today, the politicians, most of them are just working for being re-elected the next elections and so, and that's not a good basis for a good government. And so, just as each human being is responsible for his thoughts, feelings, and actions, and for the results, this is also true for each nation and humankind as a whole. Each change is beginning in individuals and not in the masses. That's very important. All of us that we are sitting here, it must begin within ourselves. And so in this respect, I think I can say you that may peace be within you and grow through you. That's time's up. I read here. Thank you. And now there is a Q&A, I think it's called, question answers now. And here we have a microphone, and now Wendelle and Michael are coming to the stage, and we are ready to answer your questions. But it is important that you come here to the microphone then and ask your questions. And these books here are for sale. I don't want to take them back to Switzerland. They're volume 1 to 8, and all of them are costing $320, and each $40. Get a chair. Can I have a chair? Oh, okay.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Microphone.
I don't think the mic. Oh, there we go. Gentlemen, thank you for the talk. It's been very interesting. I've been following the Billy Meier case for quite some years now. What I wanted to know was there a plan as to why Billy was chosen and not anybody else particularly? Is it because maybe he is more psychically evolved, possibly? That is why Samyasi and the others chose him to get in contact with him.
Yeah, he was chosen because it has to do with his spirit form and with the tasks that has been done before in former incarnations of his spirit form. And so he was suitable for this. He wasn't chosen. Somehow it was cause and effect also, because it was his task. Is this?
Yeah. In terms of Plejaran responsibility, why are the Plejarans so involved in assisting Earth humanity to spiritually progress instead of any other ET races? And number two, and if each of you could address that in your own personal way. And number two, how does our spiritual evolvement and self-responsibility help the Plaharans?
I don't know. Can you hear me? No, this is none, huh? It's on suddenly. Part of my understanding of why the Pleiadian are involved is because their forefathers, in many cases, were the gods of our antiquity. In some cases, they were the forefathers of some of our own people, or these distant gods and distant forefathers of the Pleiadian were involved in different things going on at different times on the planet with some of the indigenous or already present, slowly evolving human beings here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there appears to have been a great presence here, a greater presence than now, before in the history of this planet. There's a story of a visitation, a major visitation that came 60,000 years ago under a Pleiadian leader, Arhus. He brought 60,000 years, he brought 200 advanced spirits with him at the time that set up little fiefdoms all over the world in contact with Earth humanity. And it appears that Billy was one of those at that time. Does that sound right?
He was involved from many incarnations in spirit form, but I cannot tell you all. He was in different times. His spirit form as Henoch and Henoch, but
Enoch was one of our major prophets in biblical history. These books down here, by the way, are the contact notes. Since I left off at the 100th contact, there are books like this for those contacts too, but Christian only brought those since I finished the translations that we were doing at about 100, and they go up to about what contact now in this stack here?
this is to 340.
Contact number 340. And there's a lot more of the same kind of information in these books that has never been published anyplace else except in German.
These are in German, yeah?
Yes.
Astronomers divide our sky up into constellations for convenience. What constellation is Pleiadian in?
Pleiadian, where they are. You cannot see them, the Pleiadian, because they are located in, if you look at the Pleiades at the night sky, you have to go to jump, you make the jump into the other dimension and go further about 80 light years.
Yeah, 500 million.
Yeah, but the constellation has nothing to do with distance. It's just location in our sky. Is it near Lyra?
It's not on our sky that we see. It's not in our sky. You cannot see them from Earth because they are a fraction of a second in the future. So you have to change the dimension to get there.
But the sky is divided up into constellations like counties. You know.
I think what Christian is saying is, where we see the Pleiades in the night sky in Taurus, is it? Mm-hmm. Beyond that, we can't see, but it's beyond that direction. And then you take a right, and you go another 80.
Okay, thank you.
Are you aware of any freedom of information requests to get any of the documents the government might have in reference to the Billy Meier case?
I didn't understand.
Any freedom of information requests on the documents that the government might have on the Billy Meier case? Wendelle, you know something about that.
Yeah, we understand that the government has a large file of information on the Pleiades case. When Jim Zalatosa was invited to a major meeting in Phoenix involving the CFR and the Council of Foreign Relations and the Benzenbergs and a bunch of other powers behind the government. He was told at a break in that session, one of the men next to Jim leaned over to him and said, "I understand you studied the Meier pictures." And Jim said, "Yes." And the man says, "You know, we tried to get into that case, tried to get an agent in there and just couldn't do it. So we acquired a property above and looking down on the Meier property in Switzerland, where we set up a round-the-clock watch, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 5 years." And he said, "We actually photographed the ships over the Meier property several times." And he said to Jim, he said, "I'll try to get you one of those." And Jim said, "Oh man, I would love to have something like that." But he never got it. We never heard another thing from that man. He said that he was a member of the CFR, in the part of the CFR that was studying the Meier case.
Yeah, and we know that the Pleiadian said that our newsletter is read by the governments, and they don't like everything in it. There are some information that they don't like, and so. But we are monitored by government agencies, of course. And, you know, that's good, as you said. That's fine. They shall do this.
Yes, I've been very impressed tonight with the presentation. There's information I've never heard of before, and it about blew me over. However, I wanted to just make a couple of comments of a debunker by the name of Cal Korff, who came up with some very clever comments up in Seattle about 5 years ago. And one of them was that he started off with that he went over there to, you know, check them out and take a look, and he supposedly couldn't find the city. It wasn't on the map where Meier lives, and so he went to the library. He said, "They ought to know." And he says, "Oh, you must be going to see Billy. Why do you, does he come in here?" "Oh, yeah, he gets books on trick photography." Well, that's very clever. Okay, the next one was he showed a picture which he duplicated with a saucer hanging from a balloon next to a tree where pictures supposedly were taken before. And it was hanging on a cord, and of course it has a little tippy bit, but it showed a jet, looked like it was coming in, diving on the saucer. Well, in actual practice, he claimed that there are jets in an airport behind it, there's coming in for a landing, and if he placed the saucer just right, it looked like the jet was diving on the saucer. Have you ever heard this story? And has Billy had some pictures showing us a jet diving on a saucer?
I've never seen one, but
Okay.
I know that Cal Korff was rigging a lot of things and alleging that was Billy's
Yeah, he
work.
contrived that very cleverly. That was very cleverly done.
If you look at the first book that he wrote, a yellow-covered paperback book, sponsored by Bill Moore, by the way, he claimed that Billy was suspending the saucer, his model, between two balloons, and he showed the two arrows indicating the two balloons in a picture in our picture book, and those two balloons that he's showing were far apart. They weren't balloons, they were mishandled color separation plates at the printer's shop. They weren't using white lint-free gloves and masks when they were handling the color separation plates, which they should have been doing. And they're talking over the place and remarking on what they're seeing there, and in any kind of talk, there's little spittle drops that fly out in the air. That's what those are. When they dry on the inner negative, they look like they have a sharper outer edge. They look like a little balloon. And he's claiming that those flaws in the technique were balloons. But what would happen if you had two gas balloons out here and you hung a penny on a string between them? How long do you think the balloons would stay out at distance like that, long enough for you to take pictures?
By the way, were you in South Dakota about 5 years ago at a UFO convention?
No.
Okay, so somebody else, right?
There's a couple other things about the Cal Korff thing. If you go to my website, the They Fly website, there's a link to James Deerdorf's website and to Jerome Jansen, both of whom have diligently debunked virtually every line of Cal Korff's books. Plus, 2 years ago, I was at Santa Clara at the Bay Area UFO conference, and a guy came up to me who did graphic arts or something, and he'd given me his card. I don't know if I still have it. He had been approached by Korff to do some graphic work, and Korff said, "What would it take to make this thing look like it was suspended by strings?" If he was telling the truth, that was pretty odious. But you can read the debunking done by Jim Deerdorf and by Jerome Jansen and discover for yourself.
Christian, this is for you. You said you joined FIGU in 1987?
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about what brought you to join the FIGU and what kind of job you had at the time and possibly now? I'm not sure what you do exactly. And can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do at the center?
I have been interested in UFOs, of course, in extraterrestrial life, and actually I came to the Billy Meier case through America because I read in an American newspaper about the book, coffee table book then, and when I went to a bookstore in Zurich, suddenly I saw this book and then I bought it. There was no address in it, but finally I found Billy Meier, and so I was a passive member and then a core group member.
Are you talking about the Lee Elders book that you saw?
Yes.
And that's what you meant
The big one here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to join FIGU? I mean, did you, after you met Billy, or?
I didn't understand.
What was the reason you joined the core group?
The core group, yeah, I wanted to, I learned that this was the real thing. I was searching all my life, not all my life, since I was 20, for what is true, what can be, what is real. And then I knew when I started to read the contact notes and the books, I knew that I have found the real thing.
By the way, they have just republished that picture book that Christian mentioned in Germany. Or actually, it was published here, but it was republished with the original, with the transparencies for the publication made from the original slide transparencies. And those were the cleanest edits I've ever seen. Michael Horn has some of those on his table back there, but the resolution in that book that was published just recently is so much better than the resolution we had. And if you compare the two pictures that we're talking about, where the little spittle drops are, there's nothing like that in the new book.
Yeah, we got the message that we have to conclude, so a couple quick things. I know Christian is here till Tuesday, yeah?
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning, so effectively through tomorrow. And Wendelle, you're here for all week, yeah? And I leave on Wednesday, but I think I can speak for all of us, no, I'm kidding, and say that we would be happy to talk to you outside of here and tomorrow or a little tonight or what have you. The photo book is available through my website. Anything we can do to give you information or help, happy to do it.
Can you get one more question in?
I think they've called a halt to it, but
One more question.
Oh, you guys can go.
Oh, we can.
One more question.
Oh, because they had it times up on this thing.
One more question.
That's an error.
We can go. We can do it. So
Okay.
until they say it wasn't an error.
Okay, I've studied the Pleiadian works comprehensively, but there's a certain group, a certain school that says that they're referred to as Pleiadians. Have you heard about this concept? And the fact that the Pleiadians' information is a disinformation attempt, and the Pleiadian is more towards truth.
Okay, you know, from the very beginning, Billy was calling them Pleiadians.
Right.
And when we released the information in the United States here in English, we called them Pleiadians because they came from a star group that we call the Pleiades. We knew the difference, and we left it that way for a very good reason. There were two other things that we used to see, to check on feedback from what we were releasing. One, we continued to call them Pleiadians, whereas we knew that they were Pleiadians. If anybody else came along and was channeling Pleiadians, we knew that it wasn't the same ones that were contacting
Billy.
Billy.
Recognize it, Pleiadians?
Pleiadians was what they were called. And that name comes from a a Illyrian expeditionary that arrived in the Pleiades by the name of Pleihara.
That's important information.
And the stars were named after him because he led the engineering of the stars to make them habitable. And an interesting thing, in Burnham's Encyclopedia of Astronomy, there's 3 volumes. It covers all the stars known. And they give the origins of the star names for most of the stars in our catalog. But they have an entry for the Pleiades that says name unknown, origin of name unknown. So the argument that they've given Billy is probably as good as any, that they were named after Pleihara, and Pleiades is the anglicized version of it.
Those books represent an enormous amount of work of presenting the contact notes to humanity. It's wonderful. So I assume there's more than 8 that's out there, and I'm just impressed by the amount of work. Unfortunately, it's only in German.
Yes.
So obviously, Mr. Stevens' work of 4 volumes, the first 100 contacts, is the only English translation of that many contacts that I'm aware of. And I'm curious if we couldn't get an official version of at least the contacts that, or the translation that Mr. Stevens has brought out.
Well, let me tell you how difficult it was to get the translations we had. We started with a lady that took me to the case in the first place. She was a Swiss journalist, wrote, read, and published in 5 different languages in Switzerland. And she took me to meet Billy, and she offered to translate. When I wanted to maintain contact with him, she said, if you'll write me the letter in English, I'll translate it and send it to Billy. And he'll answer it in German and send it to you. That was before I met Billy. So I sent several letters to her first, and she did this. And then the time came after about the 4th letter. She said, this is getting to be too much for me. I'm going to have another friend of mine, also a multilingual journalist in Germany that speaks and reads and writes 5 languages, Ilse von Jacobi, to translate some. So Ilse translated some more letters between me and Billy. So when I got the first German notes, contact notes from Billy, 1,800 pages of them, I went first to Lou Zinstag and asked her if she would translate the first 2 contact notes for me so I could see what they said in English. She did, and I took them back to Billy and sat down with him to correct them, and he says, oh, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, scratched things out. Then he raised his eyes and he says, you know, this woman is a born-again Christian, and she's seeing all the information through Christian eyes. He says, that's not correct. There are too many errors. Can't use that. So I went back to Ilse von Jacobi and had her translate the same 2 articles, same 2 contact notes. And took them back to Billy again, and he says, no, that's not right, that's not right, this is not understood right, that's not right. And he said, he raised his eyebrows again, he said, this woman is a theosophist. She sees things only in terms of the philosophy of the mystic masters of the Far East. He says, that's not correct either. So then we went to a German scholar, a college student that only spoke, or claimed he spoke English. We asked him to translate the same paragraphs, and he did again. When I took that back to Billy, he did the same thing, and he said, you know, this man is stuck with Einsteinian physics, and the Einsteinian physics are not correct. So we're really stuck there, and so we asked a young man that was living in a community like Christian here at the time that spoke English reasonably well to see what he could do with them. And he translated the same 2 contact notes. I took those to Billy, and he did less crossing out, and he made some corrections, and he said, this is probably the best we can do with the sources you've got.
So the obvious question is, why haven't those been authenticated?
Well, in the first place, Billy's the language that these were originally communicated in is not a common form of German. It's Swiss German spoken on the border. And it's like Welsh English or Scotch English. Even Englishmen can't understand them. So when we go to German translators, they have to be fluent in the language on the border. There are colloquialisms that just don't translate. And
No, I mean, the translations that you've made, the 100 contacts that you've already had translated, why can't we get those authenticated, corrected, and turned into acceptable form?
Okay, because we reached the point where we didn't have any other way to go with the translations, and to put anything out in English, we would have to take the best that we had, which Billy didn't want published. He says they don't read correctly in English, and he didn't want me to publish them, but I published the first volume anyway, and everybody was interested in the next one, and I did it to the whole 1,800 pages I had. Now this stack here represents 6,000 pages, and you can come, these will be on my table tomorrow, and you can come look at these books and see what's in them in German, but they have to be read in German to really be understood.
And they must be translated now. Every translation must now be done from these here, because there is much additional information that has not been in before, and sometimes there was a not in the German, or totally the opposite. And so, and if we know someone who will making the translation, who is paying, we don't have the money to pay anybody to do translation. Everybody who is skilled is welcome.
Christian, this question is for you, and I'm going to repeat it because it's very important for me to understand this. In terms of Pleiadian responsibility, why are the Pleiadians so involved in assisting Earth humanity to spiritually progress, especially instead of any other ET races, to your best understanding?
Why they are involved?
In terms of the Pleiadian responsibility, do the Pleiadians have a responsibility? Are they here because they feel they need to correct something that they did in the past? Or are they here solely to help us on their own volition? And why the Pleiadians as opposed to the multitude of other ET races that are out there in the universe?
Well, let me start that while Christian's thinking about it. It's my understanding that the Pleiadians that are visiting Billy Meier consider this planet almost as much theirs as they do ours. They have had colonizations here a number of times in the past where they grew quite big and then evacuated the planet for one reason, usually before cataclysmic disturbances. So those Pleiadians do consider this planet of great substantial interest to them and an old home for them also. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has to do what has already been said, that their ancestors had done certain actions here on Earth that brought troubles to the Earth-born, Earth-created people, war and diseases and all kind of things, and so they feel kind of responsible for the deeds of their forefathers, and that's then the main reason.
So how does our evolvement, how does our spiritual evolvement and self-responsibility help the Pleiadians? How will that help them?
Yeah, they feel connected with all human beings all over the universe, and so if we are doing correct, if in a family all the members are doing well, you rejoice and you're glad, and if a family member makes trouble, you are have a bad feeling, and so it's the same. If they see that a population is thriving and doing good, making progress, that's a reward by itself.
There's a part of it where some people have had the idea lurking that there was some negative agenda by the Pleiadian or what have you. But someone else raised an interesting point, and that is, even if you look at the contacts with Billy that go back for more than 64 years, 64 years ago, we were less technologically advanced. Our weapons were less technologically developed. If this had been a hostile intention, they would have had a far easier time any time in the past taking over. So maybe the way we think about what's in it for me is not the same way they think, because they're also they're not obsessed with collecting green pieces of paper. They have freedom to travel in space and maybe in time and to do things that go beyond simply trying to acquire things and possess them. It's not that extraterrestrial people are immune, I'm sure, from craving power, but this group, from what we can see here, appears to have mastered that lower level of concern of human beings, and having true freedom and high responsibility, they wish to see others step up, just like we do for anybody that we can assist without doing something for someone.
Thank you. I feel much more satisfied with that answer. Thanks, gentlemen.
Hi. That actually ties right into my question, which is, since they are physical beings, beings, and they have physical needs, I am very interested in how other cultures on other planets deal with economics, their whole sort of social structure. Do they have jobs? Do they get paid? Or is it? Can you speak to how their society functions?
I can start, I think Christian will know more, but this is what I have gleaned from investigating the work that's been done by others on the case, and that is that they have whatever they require, providing they give of themselves their work and service to their society. I think that there's something like a 2-hour contribution per day by everybody. They don't elevate their most spiritually evolved leaders into any exclusive hierarchy where they're immune from contributing to their society. So where we have people, as Christian was alluding to, politicians that try to get into positions of personal comfort and pensions and all the rest, their most evolved teachers and spiritual leaders and what have you are of the same status otherwise in their world, and they contribute to the well-being of their world, and they get what they need from it. So they must have one other thing that I think of, and then I want to, because I think Christian will have more to say about it. I think if we truly could see how they live, we'd be enormously depressed. Really, because we would see that for at least 10,000 years, we've had a planet with only 250 years of peace. We're constantly warring with each other and ourselves. We're hell-bent always to possess some new thing at any cost, and we exhaust ourselves in the pursuit of acquisitiveness and unnecessary excessiveness and excessively unnecessary acquisition. They appear to have mastered that, where they realize that their freedoms are immense and enormous. They must have high responsibility at the same time, and I don't think we know that level of freedom, and to see it would probably be give us a longing in our hearts for what fools we've been for so long.
I think it would be good for us to see that. I think that's
sure.
a good example.
Do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, they see the importance of manual work. You cannot always work with your head. You need some kind of compensation. And Quetzal, for instance, he built himself a blockhouse with his own hands. And most people are tending to their garden. They dig with their shovels, and so they have huge plants, of course, to produce fruit, but they are working also with their hands, and they have their work duty. Everybody, the spirit guide as well, if they see they are traveling, they see that someone needs some help, and they get out there and helping each other. And so they could have anything they wish to have, but since everything is available, they don't have wishes. Why should they wish more than they could digest or use or something like this? They are more evolved and not hanging to the material world as we are doing.
So it is closer to a sort of utopian society. Is there anything that they're struggling with?
Yeah, they have to struggle. They have to learn. They have psychological things to learn. There are different characters among the people. You have to cope with another person you don't like as much, and to work. They have problems, but they have no war, and they have no hate, and they have no jealousy, and these things they don't have anymore.
And they live 10 times longer or so. So the consequences
more than 10 times. Yeah. 11.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Did the Pleiadians speak about the time 2012 and what might be coming upon our Earth at this time, like a lot of the other groups are?
2012. In 7 years.
Do they talk about Stargates opening or any other kind of phenomenon like that?
Stargate, yes, you can forget Stargate. That's not a real thing. And perhaps I can give another information that is not liked much by perhaps many people, that within the last 240 years there have only been 2 real abductions. The last 240 years, and to my knowledge, this has been the Betty and Barney Hill case, and the one Calvin, the Pascual.
Was that in Mississippi?
Calvin Parker or someone.
Oh, Calvin Parker?
Yeah.
You must know this. You know
Which case is it?
Only two cases.
Never heard. Oh, Pascagoula case. Yeah. What about the Pascagoula case?
That's a real
That was considered a real one.
That's a real one, and so many people have made up these happenings. They have by some ways they have foreign metal in their skin and so, or under their skin, and so that's has nothing at all to do with extraterrestrials.
One of the things, and I'm not going to lose the thread of what you asked about 2012, but to elaborate on what Christian was saying, let's go to something I didn't get a chance to go into in depth. In 1997, Billy had a contact in which he was told that the UFO cover-up actually started in 1915, when the sighting of extraterrestrial objects over the World War I battlefields were at first thought to be United States craft. This is from the translation from the Gaia guys, so you could tell me if they got it wrong or not. And that from Wilson, Coolidge, Harding, Truman, Roosevelt, Truman, 5-6 different US presidents, 3 popes, even Joseph Stalin, all came to understand that these had to be extraterrestrial and represented a threat to the power structure. So Roosevelt apparently was instrumental in bringing about the radio performance of the War of the Worlds. He had, I guess the Secret Services pressured H.G. Wells to adapt it for a radio presentation and Orson Welles to be the one that would narrate it, so as to start a trend of creating a negative idea, a fearful image of extraterrestrials as weird life forms, dangerous, and this would be seeded through all of our media and all of this stuff. So this is an idea. I don't know this is true or not. I'm just telling you what this information says. So in there is an agenda to make people fearful of extraterrestrials, and all of this, as well as the kind of humorous and playful images we've had in the media, has been percolating through the media for maybe 70 years. In the subconscious, in our subnoxious minds, we pick up all this stuff and we craft things to our own, even unconsciously crafted fears and desires and what have you, and we mix things in there. So to some degree, to whatever degree it may be, don't we understand that we are fabricating a lot of things and that the psyche is strong enough to create these things? We know that people with multiple personality disorders can manifest scars or have them disappear, or all sorts of things happen. You know of people who have stigmata, who produce bleeding in their hands because of some consciousness-related energy or disorder. So if what Christian just said, that only 2 genuine cases of abductions, everybody that's interested in the abduction field is going to go, no, that can't be true. But what do we really base this on? As he was saying about little items caught under the skin, Billy had written that people very often pick up things accidentally and it forms a scar around it, and then or spider bites and different things. So before we simply swallow the idea that everybody and their brother and sister is on some conveyor belt into extraterrestrial craft and having babies born that you never can find and all this other stuff, maybe we should calm down and take more responsibility for our thoughts and investigate how we got off on this whole tangent with evil extraterrestrials, and also know that in this case they say there are negative extraterrestrials and your world is going to have to defend itself at some point against them too. But don't go giving away all your power to every fantasy about bug-eyed aliens examining you, on the table.
And perhaps for the end of this, I didn't say this in my lecture, an information that since 1927 there have only been 8 real contacts between ETs and terrestrial human beings. That's an information from the contacts. One being the Dan Free, or the Fry from America. And so,
Dan Fry, yeah.
Dan Fry.
So Billy doesn't say he's the only contactee. He says he's the only one in contact with this particular race. Mm-hmm. And, everything else is a lot of opinions. Have to think it through for yourself. As to the 2012 question, one thing I noticed in the information was that was one year in which the possibility of a third world war could take place, but there were a number of years, 2006, 2008, 10, and 12 among them. But this is up to us. Maybe we don't have to have a third world war if we really start getting that we don't have to have that. So those numbers, I know that this is probably asked in connection with the Mayan prophecies and the Mayan calendar, about which I know almost nothing. So I really can't comment on that. But in terms of the Meier case, the only thing I've seen about 2012 was specifically about a possible year for this war to happen if we are not working this out.
Yes, this is for Christian. How have the ages of the contacts been determined? Or
the age?
The ages. There's so many years old.
Yeah. Billy is interested. They already know the Pleiadians, the new ones that are coming, that he will ask them about the age and about the profession or something like this. And he always asks now the meaning of their names. I didn't mention them, all of these names. The meaning behind this, he's interested to know, because he's writing, one of his books that he's writing is a book of names. He already has written one, and there will be a very large book, and so he needs this information for his book.
And is this Earth years or?
Earth years, yeah, of course, yes. Mm-hmm.
They're very close in the actual rotation of the planet. For a year, it's just very close.
Era is like Terra, like here, nearly.
And did you say that the contacts have helped with editing the notes?
Didn't understand.
The Pleiadian have helped. They helped Billy with the translations and corrections?
Yes, with these here, because they have recorded all of the talks through their subconsciousness. They have been recorded, and so they can get the information back and can compare it with what's written in here.
And is it possible for them to also understand English?
They understand. The ones who have learned English understand it, and the other people who don't understand have their translation device. Because, for instance, with Asina, the amphibian woman, she cannot talk like us. She has a guttural a speech you cannot easily understand, and she had to use a translation device that has to do with the consciousness that transforms the thoughts into language, into in the other person's.
So maybe they could help translate into English.
Yeah, they don't do our work. We have to do our work for ourselves, and all the people of language region has to look that they get their translations done by themselves. FIGU Switzerland is responsible for German only.
And there are, like another 5 languages currently being translated. So if there were people that were willing to help with the translation and were competent or could help to fund it, then the translations can proceed in the language. For instance, the people in Australia, Dyson Devine and Vivian Legg, are doing on their own time translation, and they submit it to Christian for approval to see, is this close enough in the meaning of the contact so that we can post it as an unofficial translation and people can at least have a gist of the information.
And in Japan they have translated several books. There are people who are paying a professional translator to translate the books, and this is possible also in the English.
Yeah, it's in Italian and Spanish they're working, and I think, is it Russian or Polish or something also? There's a...
Russia is, the Talmud Immanuel is also the only one in Russian.
This will be for Wendelle. Do you believe that the current Pope Benedict is one of the 5 conspirators?
No, I don't believe that. I think that the co-conspirators, one of them died now, there's 3 left, that the co-conspirators in the Vatican chose an older man this time because they still are controlling the Vatican hierarchy, and it gives them some moving space. They could have chosen one of their own, which was suggested at one time, and then the third prophecy would certainly be fulfilled. We would have a serial murderer sitting in the chair of the Pope. But I think that they chose an older man just to buy time.
And by the way, I just want to bring something up. Wendelle didn't in his speech, but Wendelle is someone who saw 11 rather remarkable photographs of San Francisco, and I just want to ask Wendelle to tell you about this, if you would.
Okay, Billy was taken on a trip in time, and Semyasi asked him what he would like to see. And he said, I would like to see San Francisco and the next big earthquake that's been forecast or predicted for it. So she took him someplace in time and showed him San Francisco undergoing a major earthquake where it was shaking buildings down, and and she allowed him to take pictures on the viewing screens with his camera, and there was one picture of the Transamerica Tower breaking about 2/3 of the way up from the upper right-hand side as you looked at it from, I think, from the east, down to the lower half left-hand side at about a 30-degree angle, and it was beginning to slide off. And there was plumes of fire and plumes of smoke and plumes of water from the broken lines and pipes and everything in the photograph. Now, as soon as the photograph, first problem came is when Billy came home with the pictures. Lee and I and Tom and Britt were sitting around the kitchen table, and he opened the envelope and looked at them and passed them around. And we all looked at the pictures. And there wasn't just one picture. There were 11 pictures in the envelope. The 11 pictures showed different scenes of San Francisco going down. And after that, just a few days after that, Semyasi picked Meier up again and said she wanted to take the pictures to look at the negatives. And when she refused to give them back, she said, you showed the pictures against our instructions to others that can affect the lives of a lot of people, and we're not going to return the pictures to you. So he never got them back. All it was ever saw was the 11 that we looked at. And the one picture that had the Transamerica Tower in it matched a painting that was done for GEO magazine by a staff artist fairly closely, but not really exact. The buildings were the same, but the plumes of smoke and fire and gas were not in the painting. A few of them were, but not like in the picture that we saw. And other buildings were collapsing. There was a rectangular building with towers on both ends, and the towers were falling in, smashing the middle, and things like that. There was also, we were looking for cars in the streets to try to gauge some time for this to happen. And the cars that we couldn't recognize on the street, and there weren't too many on the street, by the way, the streets were not completely closed as in the GEO painting. the GEO painting showed the streets impassable for emergency vehicles. In Billy's pictures, they were not impassable. They could have been cleared with a bulldozer or something like that. But we were looking for a time somehow, and so there were a number of cars shown in the pictures. And the car that we had never seen was a car that looked more like a Volkswagen than anything else. It's a smooth contoured car. It has tiny fins beginning to be drawn up on the rear fenders, and it had glass. The windshield glass came clear back to the back of the front door, so that the front door in the car opened in a glass frame. And we haven't seen anything like that yet, but we do see the skylights getting bigger and bigger and going further back. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it may happen in the next 10 or 15 years. And those other 11 pictures were quite graphic. They showed some scenes that overlapped, so we could see that as we looked at the pictures that we were all related. And it was very impressive to see. It looked like a lot of destruction, but they told Billy at the same time that this could be avoided by mass mind concentration. People that gave up harmful ideas and wars and things like that add energy, negative energy to the situation. Enough of that could have stalled this all off. It didn't have to happen.
Anybody else have a question? We've got a couple minutes remaining.
What's the nature of the contact today?
Please use the microphone.
Or I'll repeat that since it's short. What's the nature of the contacts today? You know more about this.
Yeah.
They're still going on with Billy now?
Yeah, now 21st January was the 410th. And now at his birthday in February 3, he certainly had contact also. And so we are about 412, and they will continue as long as he lives.
Face to face?
Face to face, yes. And telepathic also, yes. They come in his bureau, his office, or he goes up or outside sometimes in the surroundings.
I think I'll tell a quick couple of things in a minute. Billy, when I visited last year, we were talking about some things, and he said when Ptah had brought some of the younger women and people who are only 130 years old or whatever, and he said that two of the women, I think it was, wanted to go and look at the birds that are in the enclosure, and he said, well, be careful, no one sees you. And they said, well, we'll screen ourselves off, and they disappeared. And so Billy said to me, he said, I never get used to that. As many times as I've seen it, someone just disappearing in front of me. But here's the one that I really loved. In 2004, when I was there, a year before last, I was with Billy, and I happened to see he had his computer there, and I looked over, and the printer had all these sheets of paper. And he said, oh yeah, I write the teachings for the Pleiadian people, and Quetzal comes and he picks it up and he takes it back, but this is very foolish and time consuming. So he said, next week Zaphanat Paneah comes to fix my computer so that it will now write it will go to a separate server, and it will go to a separate little disk above the earth, and then it will send back to the Pleiadian. So last year, I went there and I thought, I've got to see if I can trip Billy up, because as much as I know this is real, you have to keep, there's a responsibility. So here it was. I said, Billy, last year you said Zaphanat Paneah is coming. And he said to me, oh yeah, I write the teachings for the Pleiadian. I always have him over here, and then Quetzal has to come and pick him up. But Zaphanat Paneah came. He fixed the computer, so now when I write it for the Pleiadian, it goes to a separate server, goes to a little disk, and it sends it to the Pleiadian. But he has to come back. I said, why? He says, he screwed something up in my computer when we fixed that. So you have an IT from outer space, and there it is.
Good. Time's up. Thank you.
These books that Christian brought from Switzerland are the continuations after the first 100 contacts. He's agreed to leave them on my table back there in the back for anybody that wants to see them. They cost $50 in Switzerland. And if anybody wants to buy any of them for that, we can't discount them. I think Christian had to pay for them to bring them here. But they are a bit...
$40.
$40, I'm sorry, $40. $40 for anybody that's interested. But you can look through them, look at the contacts. It's in German, but there's a lot of pictures and corroborative information filed with the case in each event.
Wendelle, Michael, Christian, thank you. See everybody at 8:30 in the morning. Good night.